Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, my name is Matseke Zulu, aka GP MaOrange, the ghetto professor. Allow me to introduce one and the only, Angus Gibson. Babu Gibson, how are you?
I am strong, I think.
You're strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our culture, it's not easy to call an elder by the name, just straight and say, Lo, Angus. But I know in your culture it's easy. David is David, Matthews is Matthews. But today you are Ubabu Angus Gibson, with respect.
And you're Israel, I'm afraid.
Me, I'm Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With respect.
With respect. Okay, without wasting any time, let's just go straight to the point, Angus. You know, it came into my concern that mostly we interview celebrities, people who are on stage or who play on screen, and then we never think about engaging people like you. That is why I'm here today. So it's very important for people to know you. They know us, they know where I come from. I come from Alexandra, blah, blah, this and this and this and this. But today I think it's an opportunity for you to profile yourself. Angus, where were you born?
So I was born in Durban, and my father was quite a rich man.
Okay.
But he lost his money about 8 years before I was born.
Okay.
So we had quite a grand house, right in one of the highest spots in Durban. You could see the beachfront, you could see Umhlanga, you could see everything. And so I lived in this very grand house, but money was short. But this is all relative. I've kind of lived, I would say, a pretty privileged life, in the sense that, there's never been a day that I have thought, I don't know where my next meal is going to come from.
Okay.
Despite the fact I went into this crazy film industry, and for many years, I think that my family sort of felt like I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
Because working in the film industry is not a
it's not a job.
Not a proper job.
Yeah, it's not a proper job.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I suppose I'm aware of the privilege that I come from, because, if everything fell apart, there are people around me that would hold me up, and I'm surrounded by people without that kind of support or that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful that I have that. And I'm also was the youngest in the family. So I kind of, the youngest people are the most spoiled people, everybody takes care of them. So I've had a life of being looked after, I suppose.
Yeah, you were taken care of.
I've been taken care of, so nothing to complain about.
So it was your dream to become a producer, to become in the film and television industry?
When I was 7, the teacher went around the class and said to everybody, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I knew exactly what my answer was. And, people said, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a pilot or whatever. And she got to me and I said, I'm going to be rich. And the truth is, I've never really achieved that.
Yeah.
But, and I can't say that I've ever really kind of made getting rich. It's never been so high on my agenda.
Yeah.
But on the journey that I've been on, I've had many happy times. And I would say that you know, that to do something that you love is a privilege.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah. And I kind of have been busy doing what I love for many, many years. So I feel lucky.
You feel lucky.
Yeah.
So when did you start at Bomb Shelter?
So I started off, right in the beginning, I wanted to make drama. But the industry in this country was pretty weird. There was the SABC, there were the feature films that were being made were all kind of rubbish. And so I couldn't see the space to do the kind of thing that I was interested in doing. And then I got a break to do things for British television and for television overseas. And what they wanted me to do was to make documentary projects, which I was happy to do because that was the 80s, and I felt like it was a crazy time in this country. And you know, through the state of emergencies and that kind of thing, I was making documentaries about South Africa, but they were being shown in other parts of the world. They weren't being shown here.
Okay.
So that also made my parents feel like I didn't have a job because they never saw anything. You know, it was like nothing was ever on television here. So it was kind of weird. And then 1994 happened and country changed. There was the first democratic elections. And I had agreed to do a documentary on Nelson Mandela, an autobiographical documentary. And it took me years to do. And I spent a lot of time with him. And then I did all the post-production, the editing in New York. And then I came back to South Africa and I thought, okay, enough of this documentary. I want to do drama again.
Yeah.
I want to do drama. And in the film collective where I had met with Tebogo Mahlatsi, who was a young intern with us.
Okay.
And as soon as I met with him, I could see that he was different to the other interns that we had had. And he was interested in the films that I was interested in. And we had a lot in common. And I met him before I went to New York to do the post-production. And when I came back from New York, you know, I said to him, well, why don't we try and do something together? And so we started working together. And he and I wrote a feature film, which I liked a lot. It was called Street Bash. And it was about it was in the period that street bashes were happening around the country.
I remember the culture of street bash.
Yeah, it was the beginning of Kwaito. And it was a very violent film. And it was a time where people, you know, they said, well, if you're doing a foreign language film, it must be a feel-good film. You can't do a feel-bad film. And we had made this kind of crazy, violent script, and so we didn't get it together. And then there was this call to do a drama series which highlighted the crisis in education in the
country,
in the townships.
In the townships, yeah.
And the person that was funding us, who was a friend of mine called Isaac Shongwe, said to me, why don't you do something that gives back, that is constructive, you know? Because he had felt that the work I'd been doing was not so constructive. And he said, there's this, you know, educational drama series. So Tebogo and I said, okay, we'd have a bash at it. And so we, together with a group of people who had never ever made any television drama before. We'd never not one of us had written a drama script before. We got together in this basement in the CBD, and over a period of a year, we wrote the scripts for the first season of Yizo Yizo. And we were in this basement, and it didn't have windows. The windows are up at street level, up there. So you could see people's feet if you looked up, and the windows didn't open, so there was no air. But there were lots of walls, and on the walls we put little squares, and on those squares we had all the different ideas. So for example, a square would be a hand grenade in a lunchbox. Tebogo had gone to school where somebody had opened their lunchbox and shown him a hand grenade. And then, there were just these ideas all over the place. And from those ideas, we made these scripts, and the scripts won the contract. And then we had to find somebody to make it with. And you would know Muneen Lee, right? The agent?
Yes, Muneen Lee.
So Muneen Lee was a friend of mine, and I said, look, I need a producer that can help us make this thing.
Then Muneen introduced you to Desiree Maghraf.
It was Muneen that put us together.
Okay.
I think Desiree looked at me and Tebogo and thought, trouble. 2 directors. And anyway, she took us on, thank goodness. And together with her, we made Yizo Yizo. And by the end of it, we kind of felt like, well, this is a team. And let's stick together.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, Tebogo and I had thought long and hard about a name, and we were called La Duma Film Factory, which was like very
La Duma Film Factory. I remember the name.
No, and we both felt it was very whack. We didn't really like the name. And anyway, when we cut Yizo Yizo, we sort of put Tupac and all sorts of, Notorious B.I.G. and all sorts of music on it that we couldn't use. And so we had to get music. So we called in some musicians, and they were the first people that watched. They watched the first 4 episodes, and they sat there on the television and they watched the first 4, and they came to the end of the 4, and we said, there was a silence, and then the one guy said, "It's the bomb." Right? And so that's where the name comes from.
Yeah. The bomb shelter.
It's the bomb. And we kind of liked it because, on the one hand, if you bomb, it's like a bad thing.
Yeah.
And the bomb is a great thing. So I thought, well, it has both things, it has good and bad.
Yeah.
And
it's the bomb because it produces heat. It's a bomb, it's a heat.
Well, also.
Then it's bomb, it's destroying, it's exploding.
Exactly. So it's both things. And so I thought, well, that's what you want in drama. You want the
good
and the bad.
I was at Rosebank.
Yeah.
We had an office there by the Rosebank.
Yeah.
That was the first office.
We had more than one office in Rosebank.
Oh, okay.
But, and then we moved to Marlborough.
Yeah.
But the problem with the office in Rosebank was that everybody used to come and visit us.
Oh.
So we could sort of never get any work done because people were coming into the office and chilling, and so that was a bit of a problem.
Let's go back to Yizo Yizo.
Yeah.
According to my concern, Yizo Yizo was a bomb, actually. Like Sarafina. It was a dream come true for many young people. I think everyone wanted to be on Yizo Yizo, and I was also one of them.
Yeah.
Me, I prophesied when I was in prison that I'm the next Yizo Yizo star.
Yeah.
Then I came out October, November, it was auditions. I was 1 month old outside. Then I remember I came there jogging. I was sweating heavily. It was fully packed. Audition room. Everyone was there. And then I met another guy, gave me tips of audition, said, they will say cry. If you can't cry, you can't get a job. And
Did I say cry?
No, the other guy. So, and for me to cry is very difficult because we were raised that a man doesn't cry in our African culture. So to cry, it's a mission. But when I got there, I think I was in an audition room for 3 hours with you, Tebogo, and Perry. Perry Berg.
Yeah.
1999. So tell me about the experience of where do you get the strength to develop, to mentor? Most of the time when I come here at BOM, there's always interns, generation and generations, and a lot of artists, successful artists come from BOM. What inspired the strength?
So I suppose, well, look, at the moment we're looking for a few roles on Shaka Ilembe, right?
Yeah.
And we have seen, I know, many, many more than 15,000 people, right? So we look hard. And the point is that, you know, you got a role, not because we thought, oh, Israel, we want to give them a break.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that we wanted to be, we weren't good guys giving you a break.
Yes.
We thought, this guy is incredible. This guy has real natural talent. And, you know, that's a gift that you've been given. And I suppose the trick is to recognize that. And, you know, when we saw you, it was clear, you know. I mean, this happens with auditions. You see a person, you think, that's the perfect person for that role. And in a way, the moment of seeing you in that audition, we sort of built the whole prison arc around that. And in a way, you were the generator of the prison arc. All the drama kind of really happened around you. And I can remember, in fact, I didn't direct on the second season because I had to step in as a producer. But I remember being on the set, which we shot in the prison, right? We shot in Luko prison. And the extras were all prisoners.
Yeah.
And there was Zola and Dumisani, who had replaced Ronnie and Ernest.
Yeah.
And I remember just standing there watching the scene. And of course, the thing is that, you know, you had the fresh experience of prison. So, you know, it was as if I was watching a documentary. It was as if, you know, prison was alive in front of me. And boy, it was full of drama. It was like, and I kind of, you know, watching that, you know, there are moments that stick in your life. And in that season, I remember that moment, watching you doing those first scenes with Zola and Dumisani. And the other thing I remember in that season was watching Menzi and Gubani. And I was watching Menzi, and somebody came up to me and sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I've got bad news, your father's died." So I remember I was watching Menzi when the person came up and told me my father died. So I remember you, and I remember that Menzi moment more than anything else.
It was the biggest Yizo Yizo. According to me, you are like, actually it's you, it's Monin, Bongani Linda the late, and Jomo Sono. I think you are very good in terms of talent scouting. Because me, it was my first time, you know, and I was scared to lose the opportunity. And if I don't make it here, where will I be? But great thanks, I've achieved that. And today I would like to say thank you, Bab Angus, for
Okay, so I've got another story to
opportunity.
tell.
Yeah.
Which was, I did a film with Mduduzi Mabaso, right?
Yes.
And anyway, this film was about a guy that comes out of prison, and there is a world that his old gang that is trying to draw him back into his old ways, and he lands up living with this priest. And it's a tussle between the gang and his old friends and the priest. And I cast Israel in the one role opposite Mduduzi, because I loved working with Israel. And I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, it's not the right cast. Because I felt you just had too much inherent power, both physically and in your performance. And I felt I needed somebody that Mduduzi could dominate, and you were not that person. And I had sleepless nights because I thought, how can I tell Israel this? How can I tell Israel that I made a mistake in the casting? And eventually I plucked up the courage and I phoned you. And I remember you were very gracious because it must have been a bad call for you. I cast Hassan instead.
Yeah.
And Hassan was right for the role. It was the right decision. But then, of course, there were many other times when you have been with us again.
Yeah.
And I suppose, of course, Zone14. So what happened, with you was like you did this incredible kind of scary guy in prison, and then you were typecast as the gangster. And when we were doing Zone14, I thought, we've got to find something different for Israel. And I thought, let him be the preacher.
Uncle Kumba.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
And we kind of sucked that character out of our thumb. This crazy preaching uncle.
Yeah.
And I remember I sort of liked the idea of you having long, long dreads.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how to make that work. And so we put this big turban thing on top of your head.
Yeah, I remember it was an everyday job. When we shoot,
Yeah.
it must take 30 minutes, 45 minutes to create that,
Yeah.
that long head.
Yeah. And I remember doing the audition with you, and you wore sort of these rags and this thing on your head and sandals. And when I just looked at you, I thought, okay, we know who the character is. He's the crazy guy was there on the screen. It was just manifest. And then we gave you a snake. And I remember, most people on sets are afraid of snakes, but not Israel. Israel was perfectly at home with the snake, and the snake used to sort of wind in and out of your fingers, and everybody else would keep a distance. But you were really comfortable with it.
I was comfortable. If people make you believe this thing is not going to bite you, I think you go by that motivation, even though it's dangerous. But if you are well motivated that, no, this is not going to hurt you as long as you behave like this and this. So that's what I did. So let's talk about the lost of our fellow actors. I'm starting from Christopher Kubega, gunman. And their life, who are still alive in general, like Innocent Masuku. What is your take on that in the industry, whereby you've worked with people for a long time, and then when you look the lifestyle and some of their ending, it's a bad ending? But let me say eye for eye, as Israel. Me, I've done very well. I don't know what might be the reason for other actors not to do well up to the end and experience suicidal, drugs, bankruptcy. What is your take on that?
Well, I think for most people, most actors that were involved in Yizo, well, not most, but many, it has not ended well. And I do think it was quite a particular phenomenon, specifically the first season.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I remember Tsepo Ngwane, who played Teaser.
Yes.
He said to me, the night that the first episode was on television, he walked out of his house the next day and he said his whole life had changed. Like there was a kind of a obsession that sort of South Africa, or certainly the South Africa that surrounded him, you know, people in the townships had with the show. And there was kind of very little distance between, you know, people's perception of the characters or of the actors and who they were playing. So with Ronnie and with Ntogoza, you know, who were playing Chester and Papa Action, kind of gangsters felt they were fellow gangsters, and kind of embraced them as such and expected them to behave in that kind of way. And the point is that, you know, actors in South Africa, I mean, they earn much better now than they did back then, but back then it was not a decent amount of money. And so here you are, a celebrity with nothing to protect you. One, nothing to sort of support you, to understand how to deal with all this attention that you get. And also just not enough money to not go in a taxi, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It happened to all of us.
And in that beginning, I think it was incredible for them, and it was devastating. And the other thing was that we at BOM had we were interested in kind of naturalist performance. We were interested in real people. And the television around us was kind of interested in a much more upmarket world. And so those people found if they weren't working for us, they weren't working. So that was a huge pressure on us, which was like, damn, you know, these are hugely talented people, and they're not getting work. You know, I mean, in those days, Generations was in English. You know, there was Isidingo or whatever, and Generations, and they were in English, and so these hugely talented people were not getting work. And that was one of the main impetuses for Zone14.
Yeah.
Was I felt like, let me create a daily show, or let us create a daily show in which people, like the kind of actors that we love working with, would get a kind of secure income. And I suppose that was one of the main impetuses behind Zone14 was. And you know, people said to us, hey, but you're using the same actors. Well, you know, in a sense, we were trying to provide some kind of home.
Financial stability.
And we have always looked for new talent. You know, there were new people that came onto Zone. There's always been for us a mix of brand new people and and old people. And there's a great energy between people that have wisdom and experience and being rubbed up against people that are raw and have like just raw talent. And you brought that raw talent to Yizo too.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you gave a performance as good as the most experienced
that was the
of
best.
the people out there.
Remember, it was banned. Yizo Yizo too.
Well, they tried to ban it. They tried to ban it. And there was the government, that the government met for 2 days to discuss whether
the
Yizo...
The 9-second scene.
Yeah.
1,000 in Chester.
Yeah.
I think that was the most problematic scene. They said they don't want to see that. How do you feel being a producer or a filmmaker? Then you produce a content which you believe is relevant to the people. Then the government or the department decides to ban the story. How do you feel about that?
So I felt good. Because, I told you I did all these films for overseas, right?
Yeah.
And the problem was, they didn't show in this country.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had no audience.
Yeah.
Because the audience were people I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
So when Yizo Yizo happened and people were watching, I didn't care if they loved or they hated it.
Yeah.
As long as they were watching, right? And in fact, with the very first episode of the first season, there was a petition to take it off air.
Okay.
With, they were looking for 1,000 signatures or something, So from the beginning, there were definitely people that hated it. And there were government debates for the first season and the second season. And you're right. It was in the second season when my 1,000 gets hold of Chester that the shit really hit the fan. That was when there was... I remember the next morning, I was driving to work and 702 called me. And I can't remember what they asked, but anyway, the point, so we were very surprised after season 1 that Chester and Papa Action were so big, because in the writing, they were like, these little gangsters. But Ronnie and Ntokozo had sort of had done such brilliance in bringing those characters to the screen that everybody just couldn't get enough of them. And so we were accused of sort of making gangsters as role models, which is not the intention of the series. So we were determined in the second season to try and make the characters multi-dimensional. To see that these are people that suffer too. They are not, kind of impervious to sadness or, And so the arc of being victimized in prison was very important for us. And we feel that we did our research and we represented it in a way that we believe is real. And in fact, that 9-second scene, which is so what you see is Chester is forced by the boss in the cell or whatever to dress up as a woman. And you see him coming in and he goes behind the curtain and then you can hear what happens behind that curtain. And I think there was a hand that reached up to the locker next to the bed, and everything on the locker starts shaking as the sexual act is happening, right? And so you weren't seeing the sexual act, but the I suppose the violence of it was very evident.
I think that was a good part. That's where the series has sent its message to the people that crime doesn't pay.
Sure. And of course, I remember, you know, the reason that we were given permission to shoot in Leeuwkop, the head of Leeuwkop said that nobody had shot there before.
Yeah.
And I had gone to do research and I said, would you let us shoot inside the prison? And he basically said, if you tell a story that says crime doesn't pay, you can shoot in the prison.
Yeah.
So that was part of the deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then there was an outcry from the Women's League then to ban the series. And the Youth League stood up against the Women's League. And the Youth League, the ANC Youth League, said, we support the series. And in a way, it was one of the first fractures in the ANC. It was one of the first times one saw a visible disagreement happening inside the party. And then it was debated inside the parliament for 2 days. And finally, it was agreed that the series could continue.
Yeah, the series must continue.
Yeah.
Are you aware that Yizo Yizo has changed the game? I mean, we grew up with the culture of Van Damme, Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, those Western superstars. But when Yizo Yizo came, changed the whole scenario. Are you aware of that?
I have a sense
Yizo Yizo started to create its own superstars till to date.
Yeah.
It's a great work that Yizo Yizo has done to us. Let me tell you the story that happened that I've promised I'm going to tell you. The episode that I was appearing on, at home it was fully packed like this. I didn't have my own television in my shop. So I have to lock the roller door, walk to the passage, and watch the TV with my family. My grandmama was still alive, my mother and other siblings and neighbors. So, generation ended to play. Then I said to the people, Yizo Yizo won't play today. Because you're craving to see what's going to happen. So that will make Yizo Yizo not to play today, guaranteed. It never play. Nokolo Grootboom announced that we apologize. I think there's a problem with the cassette. Yizo Yizo won't play.
Really?
He didn't play. Then next week, it was fully packed at home again. Then I said, no, yeah, today is going to play. I think it's the right timing now. We're ready to see. And everyone was ready to see what am I doing there. And I know I was a character of vulgar, heavy. And my grandmama is right here. Then I appear. Oh my God. Then the next morning I said, let me take a walk. Just to observe on the street what's going to happen. What will be the response from the people. Then I came across the people from municipality, those who clean the streets. All women, typical Xhosas and Zulus there. And they say, hey, here's this guy. Say what you said there. Me, I was scared that hey, people are going to run away when they see me. But I became a favorite of the people because I'm the one who was teaching the lesson to Papa Action and Chester Guti. Crime doesn't pay and young people mustn't come to prison. So how many films and how many series, drama did you produce up to date?
I don't know. I've never been asked that question.
You've never been asked? How many?
I've never thought about it. I can't even guess.
Yeah, no. Yizo Yizo, Zone14.
But there was a lot before Yizo Yizo.
There was a lot before Yizo Yizo.
Know. Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, there was Yizo, then Zone14, then Isibaya.
Isibaya.
And Ayeye. And then I did the 4 Heartlines. With one of them, Taduzi. There's Istembiso. There was The Road. There's Back of the Moon with you. Yeah. You get shot.
And Lemogang Tsipa.
Yeah. And Lemogang.
That's when you I think that was your first work with Lemogang Tsipa.
That was the first.
After Beyond the River.
Yeah.
After you was playing Beyond the River.
Yeah.
How was it like to work with Lemogang Tsipa?
So I had, so first of all, on New Year's Eve, I was down at the beach and Craig Fremont came to me and he said, I've just been working with this actor. And he said, he is incredible. He says, he'll do scene one way and then afterwards he'll say, how was that for you? I can do it another way, you know. And anyway, he was talking about Lemogang.
Yeah.
And anyway, Lemogang was playing this very good guy in his movie. And anyway, I wrote together with Libby Dougherty, I wrote Back of the Moon. And the bad gangster. So I wrote the script, Back of the Moon, with Libby Dougherty. And there were a lot of gangsters in Back of the Moon, but the bad gangster
was the ghost.
I wrote for was the ghost.
The ghost.
And I wrote for you were a good gangster.
Don't sing.
But the bad gangster I wrote for Warren. And Warren was when I had a space in which somebody lent me the camera to make the film. And in that space, Warren was on another film. And I thought, what about that Lemogang guy? Because my gut said, he can play a good guy, but I think he can play a bad guy as well. And so Lemogang came in and he had a lot of fun playing a very, very bad guy. And I suppose that, in a way, informed my decision about Shaka Ilembe, because I felt, for me, Shaka is a very complex person with many elements to his character. And I felt that Lemogang would be able to bring those many elements. He could bring the real darkness of Shaka's dark side, and he could bring a kind of the incredibly inspiring side as well.
You remember you called me and asked me about him.
And what?
About Lemogang.
And what did you say? I can't remember.
Said he's a good guy to work with. I'm the one who recommended him.
So in fact, Lemogang,
you asked me about
owed to Israel.
Said, Israel, how's Lemo working with him? He's a brilliant actor, that boy. How is like working with Nomza Mombata? Okay, we've got so many superstars in the industries that we know where their journey has started. But there are those, you just see them flying out of nowhere. Tell us about Nomza Mombata.
So Nomzamo, so when we were looking for the young romantic lead on Isibaya, we saw many thousands of people. And she had never acted before. And she came in fact, Kutlwano, who worked with me on the casting, and we worked together on a lot of things. And he saw her. And I think that she had auditioned as a TV presenter or something, and he had somehow seen her. And we, in fact, presented a number of people we were thinking about to Mnet. So we had to present to Mnet people we were thinking about for the Tandeka role. And there were people that were in the industry, and And Kutlwana slipped in a picture of Nomzamo. And I remember she had sort of orange hair at the time. And of course, you can imagine, everybody looked and said, who's that person? And this was Nomzamo. So we called her in, and I think she did the record number of auditions. One, because she had never acted before, and so we spent a lot of time improvising with her. And then we were in search of spool that we really struggled to find. So poor Nomzamo did endless auditions, and she was very patient. And I remember the very first day we were in Nkandla to Yellow Ferry. And we were shooting at this river in this little valley. And it was the hottest, it was unbearably hot. And Nomzamo, just right near the beginning of the shoot, burst into tears. And she said something about the sun and her skin, and I thought, oh my God, we've got a prima donna here.
Yeah.
This is trouble. Anyway, I was wrong. The truth is, it was an unbearably hot day, and there was huge pressure on her. And the truth is that she absolutely rose to the occasion. Well, that was more than 10 years ago. And we've kind of been close ever since. And of course, now we are working together, both in front of camera and behind camera. So it's been, there have been, many great relationships have come out of these years of looking for people. But hers is certainly one of the most significant ones.
Yeah, she's an international star. Okay, if you had to change some of the things in the industry, what would be those things to change? I'm making you a president now, or a minister of arts and culture.
Well, the main thing would be that the people that create the project have some kind of ownership of the intellectual right. The IP is something that in my career, there's hardly anything that I have any kind of ownership of. So, I don't like to think of it, but like the end of my career is, is somewhere over there in sight. And at this point, I own virtually nothing. And that there's something fundamentally wrong about that. And it kind of makes for an industry that has a kind of a scar or a wound right in the middle of it, I think. And around the world, on the whole, broadcasters respect the creators and they have intellectual, they have the IP. But of course, there's certain cases now with the streamers where they're doing exactly what has been happening in this country. Netflix will pay for something and own it entirely, in most cases. So in a way, the world is catching up with the bad habits of South Africa, as opposed to South Africa catching up with the good habits of the rest of the world. So that for me is one of the huge problems in our industry.
What is your take on Western stories, actually Western actors portraying African characters? Like Nelson Mandela, Long Walk to Freedom, Ty Diggs, The Drum, Mandela's Gun, what?
I suppose there's a South African perspective on it and the rest of the world's perspective on it. I mean, for me as a director, I would not want to direct a non-South African playing a South African character. Because there's something kind of fundamentally fake about it that I can't relate to. But of course, you know, an international audience do not have the same kind of feeling about it. I mean, you know, I mean, a series that I love is The Wire, which was the first big role that Idris Elba ever had.
Elba, yeah.
And he's a British actor, and he was playing an American. I suspect that he got the accent absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah.
But the point is that I watched that, and I think he is incredible in it. And maybe, you know, when non-South Africans watch Idris Elba playing Mandela, they think, oh, he did it very well, you know, whatever. So it depends on your perspective. But okay. I can't do it. Okay. It's like, it's not something I'm interested in doing. Like, you know, I'd love to work with Idris Elba, but I don't want him to play a South African.
What is success to you? Yes. What is success?
You know, I can remember, you know, you know, as I said to you earlier, my parents never felt like I had a proper career. Yeah. Well, you know, and so I felt slightly guilty about it, right? And I thought, well, you know, maybe if I got a big award or something, you know, maybe then I would feel.
Do you have awards?
I do have some awards, but, you know, so anyway, the point is I was nominated for an Oscar for the Mandela Project. So I went to the Oscars, and I didn't win it. But, I mean, the point is I was nominated, which, you know, for many people is a big thing. But still, I didn't really feel like, I didn't feel like I still had a proper career. So that didn't change that.
You feel like a hustler?
I still feel like a hustler.
You're hustling?
Yeah. But what would success be? You know, look, reaching an audience is a key part of success for me. So the fact that Yizo finds generation after generation of audience is hugely gratifying.
Now, people still talk about Yizo Yizo even today.
Yeah, and young people, you know, young people still,
a child that is born
go to it. Yeah.
Last week, today is talking about Yizo Yizo.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So that, I suppose, is success.
Okay.
But do I feel successful? I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that I'm ambitious.
Yeah.
And I still have, you know, I suppose one of the things when we were setting up BOM was I said I wanted us to make work that made a dent in the world, that made an impression. And I think that we have made work that has made a dent in South Africa. Yeah. You know, in some way or other. But I'm not sure that we made a dent in the world. So maybe that's still up ahead.
Oh, that's the destination.
We've got to.
That has to be a destination.
A dent, not just in South Africa,
You know,
but in the world.
In the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're about to finish our conversation. Your persistency. I see you persisting. Since I know you, I know the time I know you, it was in your first first time of doing things. You've been doing things before you met us. How do you persist?
I persist because I love what I do.
You love what you do.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Mr. Angus Gibson, thank you very much. Today, I thank everything that I've achieved from here. I came with a small role. My role was very small. I think I was just passing by, Yizo Yizo. But I've received a lot of work from POM. Not only as an actor, but talent supplying, pushing my agency. I did catering for music video, Tembi Siete, Chiscop Mendoza, location scouting, script development, lingo consultation, mentorship. Thank you once again. Thank you.
And you've catered for my son's birthday.
And I've catered for Ben's birthday. And I'm still gonna cater again when you come there by 11th Avenue. So the journey continues. Siyabonga Mtomtala, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we end, to be continued by Israel Matseke Zulu. Thank you, siyabonga. Abashwe. Ke bana ba baloyi.